That rollout not going all that well. Senator JD Vance of Ohio is standing by his past comments about childless cat ladies. As a reminder, here's what the Republican nominee for VP said back in 2021 when he was running for Senate.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children.
So on Friday, Senator Vance appeared on the Megyn Kelly show to try to defend his comments.
Obviously, it was a sarcastic comment. I've got nothing against cats. I've got nothing against dogs. I've got one dog at home, and I love him, Megyn. But look, this is not, people are focusing so much on the sarcasm and not on the substance of what I actually said. And the substance of what I said, Megyn, I'm sorry, it's true. It is true that we become anti-family. It is true that the left has become anti-child. It is simply true that it's become way too hard to raise a family.
Not much of a cleanup there. And then Vance also appeared last night on Fox News, where ahead of the interview, this was how he was introduced by host Trey Gowdy.
When that interview surfaced, two things leapt to my mind. Those of us who talk for a living make mistakes. We say things that in hindsight we might phrase differently or better or not at all. And then I thought about a stormy day at Reagan National Airport where I met two women desperately trying to get home to South America. I was trying to get home to South Carolina. We spent the whole day together, finally making it to Charlotte, and then somehow we got them on a flight to Houston. They were headed to visit family in South America before returning to their new home called America. And when we parted ways, they said they'd like to pray for me as their way of saying thanks for the day spent together. And I assured them it's too late to help me. But I do have a friend who's expecting, and she got some tough news about her unborn child. Would they please pray for her instead? And they did, and they still do to this day. They're Catholic nuns, childless, dedicated to God, love this country, living lives of service to others. And it's not just Catholic nuns. Some of the finest people I know don't have children. Teachers and guidance counselors and lawyers and doctors, and they love other people's children enough to teach and guide and protect and minister to them. Some people choose not to have children. Others desperately want them, but they can't. In a moment, we'll speak with Senator JD Vance. We have never met before, but we have many friends in common who tell me that he is smart and he is talented and he is more than capable. None is perfect, no, not one. That's what the good book says. And the American people are forgiving if we ask.
That is a jaw-dropping introduction of JD Vance on Fox News. So when then Vance came on, here's how he responded to the criticism of his comments.
Do you agree that there are people who very much love this country and are invested in its future, but they also happen to be childless?
Oh, of course I believe that, Trey. And if you look at the full context of what I said, it's very clear the Democrats have tried to take this thing out of context and blow it out of proportion, which is what they always do, Trey, because they don't have an agenda to run on themselves. Really what I'm trying to get at here, Trey, is that it's important for us to be pro-family as a country. Of course, for a whole host of reasons, it's not going to work out for some people. We should pray for those people and, of course, have sympathy for them. I still think that that means we should be pro-family, generally speaking, as a party. And I think that our country has become particularly hard for parents, especially under the policies of Kamala Harris.
So, Jen, efforts to clean that up have failed to this point, to put it mildly. And I think the fact this became a thing on Fox News last night shows this has broken through. This is a real thing that Trump fans now have to deal with.
Well, and it does strike me when Vance decided to go on Megyn Kelly, which I'm sure Megyn Kelly is very persuasive in her pitches. She's like, come on my show and clean this up. It's something Trump would have never done, right? Trump would have never apologized or tried to explain. He just would have moved on. But Vance just like keeps digging deeper and deeper into this hole. And it's the kind, I mean, like, look at Trey's own response to it, to talk about, what's he conveying to us in that, in what he said. I mean, first of all, it's a very moving thing about what he said about the nuns, but it also suggests to me he does not think this is a winning ticket. Right? When a Fox anchor is going out of their way to distance themselves from the running mate, it does not suggest to me that they think that this is a winning message. And he keeps, he basically apologizes to the cats, is what Vance does. Right, but then saying cats, that the women, I like cats, apologizes to the cats, doubles down on the underlying comment that childless women are ruining the country, and does he support child care tax credits? When that was up you talked about did he support that when that was up in the Senate? I don't believe he voted for that. I don't believe he voted he's not acting on anything like this. And it is, this kind of stuff, this organic wildfire that. This is what fuels campaigns, and everyone gets it, and it punctures through politics, and it's what, this is the kind of lightning in a bottle that campaigns hope for.
I think you nailed it, though. Organic wildfire, lightning in a bottle. What happened last week with the liberal memes about JD Vance went mainstream. And outside of JD Vance's base, outside of the Republican base, he has been branded, he has been defined as weird. Whether they like it or not, recovering from that is going to be next to impossible with most Americans after what went down last week. And then he just kept piling it on by not really showing an ounce of empathy and just saying, I'm really sorry. I never would have wanted to hurt people who have struggled with fertility issues. That's not what I meant. I meant I want to support families. But no, he has those sarcastic remarks that aren't even funny, and he kind of shows that he can't really deliver a one-liner.
So, Sam, weird is the word here in terms of initial impressions from Vance to the American public. We know why he was picked. There were some Republicans who at the time warned Trump, maybe this is not the right decision, but for Trump, it was like, look, this could help me in the Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan trio. Vance from next door in Ohio. Also, the idea of white working class voters, populism, and perhaps that Vance was going to be the MAGA heir apparent as Trump and his team made that pick thinking they were winning and winning big, and this was their effort to sort of run up the score. But that race now has totally changed. What are you hearing? What's you and your reporters hearing in terms of second thoughts that GOP might be having?
Well, the Republican Party writ large, there are portions of it that look now at the pick and say, man, maybe we should have gone in a different direction. We have not heard that from the Trump operation, and frankly, I wouldn't totally expect it until maybe later if things keep going this way, because it's not their position to ever sort of admit fault or doubt. Often their position is to just whack back harder, and they tried desperately this week. You could see it online. All of the Vance surrogates and the Trump operatives trying to redeploy the weird moniker back on Democrats in a forced way. But look, yes, you're right. I think this pick was made from a sense that they were going to win. Now, Trump wanted to, and his operation wanted to jack up the white male vote because they felt like that's how they lost in 2020 to Biden. But they also felt like they were going to win. And I think one of the perils that you see now is not just that JD Vance, has these positions that, are offensive to women, although I think that's a huge peril, but in a larger sense that he, is from a different generation where you say a lot of weird things, you go into your media echo chambers. All these clips that have surfaced have come from conservative media, conservative podcasts. Also, he's 39, that age of which I'm part of. We wrote a lot of stuff online that we probably regret. And I think ultimately, that's hampering him, is that he said a lot of things, wrote a lot of stuff online that is now coming back to bite him. And that simply would not have been the case for some of the other nominees. I just sincerely doubt, for instance, that Doug Burgum had a secret blogger past in his file. I just don't see that happening. So anyways, I think that's part of the problem here.
Now, Sam, don't worry. You've been carefully vetted. You will not be my running mate.
I would definitely not pass a vet. Don't vet me. Don't even waste your time. Not worth it.
There's no chance. No one in the party is calling for you. We should note, though, this is how John Bolton, who served for the Trump administration, a longtime Republican, how he responded to these Vance comments.
I think these comments by Vance are really the 2024 counterpart of Hillary Clinton's famous statement in the 2016 election where she called Trump's supporters deplorables. I mean, if politicians can't learn, it's one thing to attack your opponent. It's another thing to attack your opponent's supporters. And that's just not a way to win friends and influence people. I don't think Vance learned the lesson that Hillary Clinton, unfortunately for herself, learned in 2016. That's going to hurt Trump as you get closer to the election.
So, Reverend Sharpton, there are two things here, right, this is doing. One, this is just further firing up the left, who are already so enthusiastic this last week about Harris. This is another thing they can point to and memify and fundraise from. But it also does risk, for the Republicans, alienating that thin slice of voters who actually are gettable in this race. Maybe suburban women or families who have gone for Biden or Trump and were, not sure where to go this time around, now see a new choice and then see comments like this and could be really turned off by them.
They can really be turned off, that thin slice of voters that could go either way. And I think that it shows that you're looking at a person who says it's sarcastic to say something that is outright misogynist and offensive to not only women, but to men in this country. There's nothing sarcastic about that. What I think it also shows is that he is really not a good political athlete. If you get caught saying something that is indefensible, you say, I was wrong, I shouldn't have said that, and you try to deal with it and move on. You don't try to justify it or act like it was just some sarcastic comment that you know is very injurious to people. And I think that Donald Trump is seriously got a problem because this guy's going to keep doing it. When you can't own that you've made a grievous error, you're going to have a long 3 months, Donald Trump, with this guy. Can you imagine this guy being a foot away, a step away from being president of the United States, and he has said things like this and doesn't even know how to deal with it?